Tell me about your early life, Mr. Maxwell. You weren't actually born in Tauranga, were you?
No, I was born at Opanaki, 40 miles down the coast from New Plymouth. Father had a farm, 400 acres, 4 miles Opanaki on the main road. No, that was before my day that he had the farm. We had moved on to a small farm at Rahutu.
Yes.
We were 8 miles Opanaki thing. That's the home I was brought up in.
Mm-hmm. How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had an older sister and an older brother. There were just the 3 of us.
A lot of people call you Togo. Is that a name that goes right back to your early days?
Yes. I was a sickly child, and my mother was much concerned, parents were much concerned as to whether I'd survive or not. Chances weren't very good. It was just at the time of the Admiral Togo, the Japanese fleet, devastated the Russian fleet in Port Arthur. And of course at that time, he was a great man. Mothering her pride and her sickly boy started calling me Togo. It stuck to me all my life. I'm still Togo.
Did you have much contact with the Maori people when you were a child?
Yes. My father went over in the AC Force in 1881 at the town of Te Whiti, and there are a lot of Maoris all around. Father always got on very well with the Maoris. He had an admiration for the old-time Maoris, and Father had risen to the rank in the AC Force. Father had risen to the rank of Major, and the Maoris regarded him as a rangatira, and they used to come and chat with him a lot, consult him about their problems, some of their problems, or reminisce. Both father and mother had a great admiration for those old-time Maoris, so I had a lot of contact with them as a child. I have very fond memories of the the old Maori women used to come down to visit my mother. They come down 3 or 4 at a time. We had a large kitchen at home, and these old women still weren't wearing moko, and they sit down in the kitchen and talk to mother. My parents didn't like anybody smoking in the house, and the Maoris knew that, so every now and again these old women would get up and we'd walk out into the yard at the back of the house and sit down on the earth bank out there. She'd faucetting her dress round her waist and produce a tobacco pouch, a pipe, and she'd sit down there and have a pipe. Then she'd get up and come in, put a pipe away, get up and come inside, and one of the others would get up and go and have their smoke. Then these same old women used to bring their children and their grandchildren. They had great pride in bringing their grandchildren, their babies down. And in various ways, I had a lot of contact with the Maoris.
Tell me the story you told me once before about the cannibal. I think somebody told your uncle a story about a cannibal feast.
Oh yes. Down below our place, about a mile away, there was an old Maori fort, Okahu. And back in history, there'd been a very big battle there. One of these old Maoris who had actually fought at that battle came and was chatting with my father one time, said it was a very hard battle, but we won. So the battle was over, and we, all the young fellows, we were all sitting in groups talking about the battle. And the women came in and they prepared the cannibal feast. And when it was duly cooked, they'd come over and hand it round. This old Maori said, I was handed an arm. And they couldn't pronounce the name Maxwell, they always call my father Macawera. Said, you know, Macawera, it was a funny thing. I was handed his arm. And I had it in my hand, I was turning it round, eating the meat off the bone. He said, as I turned it round, I knew whose arm it was. He said it had the tattoo mark on it. I knew it was my uncle's arm. And you know, Macawera, perhaps you don't quite understand, but it made me feel quite sick. But he finished his meal. I always said those were good women. Those were women that were eating. He said they were good women. Oh, aye. They were very good women. Good eating.
Mr. Maxwell, how old were you when you first came to Tauranga?
I was brought up here from Taranaki to be christened in this home here in 1903. Or it might have been, I was born in end of July 1903, it might have been just into 1904, I don't know. And I was christened in the house here. I have no recollection of that, but this home was sort of a tradition in our home. Long before I saw it again in 1910, I knew it was a sort of traditional family home. I have very clear memories of my second visit when I was brought up here in 1910. My brother and I think it was the year after the main trunk line was opened, so we went into New Plymouth, 32 miles into New Plymouth, in the old horse coach, stayed in New Plymouth overnight, caught the Wellington mail train. I think it left about 6:30 in the morning thing. Went down as far as Martin. I went up, I think that first day we got up the main trunk line as far as Taihape. We stayed in Taihape overnight. Next day we went on to Tamanui. We could have gone right on, but my father was interested in a sawmilling outfit at Tamanui, and we stayed there overnight. I went out to a milling place to Ringamutu, just a few miles out of Tamanui. Next day we went on to Martin, on to Frankton. And I think the same day carried on down by train to Rotorua. Father was with us at this period, and we did all the usual trips in Rotorua. I remember them quite well, frying pan flat and so on. And I remember the old accommodation house at Waimango before it was blown up in 1917. And we did the usual trips there. I think we were there about 4 or 5 days. Then we came on to Tauranga by horse coach through the Oripi Road. I remember the trip very well. It was winter time. It was a wet day. Hotels all put on early breakfast coach travellers. The coaches usually got away not long after 6 o'clock in the morning, depending on the length of the journey ahead. And the hotels always put on a early morning breakfast for coach travellers. And it was a good breakfast, a good old binder. And we'd finished our breakfast and we were waiting in the vestibule of the hotel. Somebody called out, "Here comes the coach." It was still dark. We heard the rattle of the iron wheels and the horses' shod feet coming along with a clatter. We crowded out onto the pavement. In front of the hotel, there was a big veranda there, and there was a very bright light there. I have no doubt it was acetylene gas. Brilliant big lantern above us. The coach came down with the little carbide lights burning on the side of the coach, lamps similar to the ones we used to use in our push bikes years afterwards. And we scrambled into the coach and set off. Eventually we got through the mud to a halfway house at Nawara, where we had a good dinner, change of horses, and then on to Tauranga. I said it was winter time, the roads were muddy, and I remember well, it was a full coach, the driver and I were the only two that didn't get out and push in the bad parts. I remember, well, I had two men pulling the wheels over, holding the spokes and pulling the wheels around, one right into the next, two men on each wheel, and the rest of the gang pushing behind. They even had my brother, who was only 10, on the end of it. He was pushing too, but they left me alone. I was useless. So we were sure to get here. There was never any question of getting here. We thought it was great fun, of course. And I was sure to get here because the tradition of the coaching days was the males must go through. That had a very practical reason. The existence of these small coaching outfits depended on their male contracts. So the post office in a box seat, they could say and ensure the males went through. If the males didn't go through, they would lose their contracts and they'd be out of business.
Right. What was the Elms like in those days?
Huh?
What was the Elms like in those days? Was the
Well,
were the house and
I
gardens?
wouldn't mention it at first. The lights were burning on the coach when we left Rotor in the morning. By the time we got to Tara, 42 miles on, they'd lit lamps again.
It took as long as that.
We were from before daylight in the morning to after dark at night during the 42 miles. The Elms was in some ways much as it is now. I only a little fellow, I was 7, but the place fascinated me. The mission had then been closed for 27 years, but it was very much as it being in the mission days. Originally there were 14 permanent buildings. They still had all except 2 of those. There were 12 permanent buildings here. The garden was substantially the same as it is today. At that time we still had 17 acres of private land. There was no Mission Street, no Marsh Street. Town was a nice quiet little place then, just 1,000 people altogether. I'd really love to see it same again today. It'd be nice and peaceful. And we had a good time here. We were both school age, but we didn't go to school. Taranaki was a long way away. Nobody came to worry us. I don't think it did us any harm at all. We used to spend our days out in the garden, bird nesting, or one thing or another, and gathering fruit. We'd eat as much fruit as we liked. It was very charming to me indeed, but very fascinating. To me it was a veritable Garden of Eden. I still feel a bit the same about it. The life in the house, it was the life of the mission days. There was my grandmother, an old lady then, well in her 80s, and my 2 aunts, Edith Maxwell and Alice Maxwell. My grandfather, being dead many years before, he being a Presbyterian minister, and my 2 aunts being brought up in the manse in Australia. And that quiet Christian life went on in the home. For instance, there was no such thing as rising from the breakfast. Well, we just rose from the breakfast table, reversed our chairs, and then knelt, and we were led in prayer. There was no such thing as leaving the room without prayer in the morning. There's also no such thing as a Sunday going by without going down to St. Peter's Church, Presbyterian Church. My aunts would get the 2 little horse paddocks there. My grandmother had a nice little phaeton, so my aunts used to get a horse in, groom it nice, and smart little phaeton, and we'd drive down. Although it was only a very short distance away. There was no such thing as Granny walking down to church. Oh no. We arrived at church in the phaeton, my aunt's driving, or one of my aunts driving. So then Sundays were Sundays. We had played all the usual games, simple card games and sort of thing, or drafts and anything else we liked through the week. Saturday night the playing cards would be put away and you'd never see a playing card. until after Sunday. There was a very strict Sunday observance. I remember it all very. He did quite a lot to mould my life, and I remember it all with great affection.
When did you actually permanently move to Tauranga?
Oh, I mentioned that from 1910 on. No, my next visit to Tauranga was in 1918, when I was then going to Southern School in Hamilton. And I made, during the 15 months I was at Southern School, I came over here. I was at the school on Armistice Day. I came over here 3 or 4 times. Usually over the Kaimai Road. It was quite an adventurous thing. It was a pretty muddy road. Foolishly, the first time all I knew about, I was used to riding a bicycle then. 32-mile ride in New Plymouth didn't worry me at all. I was fit enough. I had a bicycle at school, so I took the train to Matamata. I arrived at Matamata, I think it was 3:15. Set out of town, I was quite light-hearted about it. It was only 35 miles, I think, 32 miles, or 36 miles. And I knew I could accomplish that, at least I thought I did. But I didn't get to Tauranga until about 3 o'clock the next day. I was fitting up and I knocked myself out rushing at the steep road on the outside of the Kaimai. Heavy mud, foolishly dragging my bicycle along with me. If I'd left the bicycle behind, I got on much better. Consequence of this was by 9 o'clock, I knew the time I'd just been given a luminous watch, so I know the time. At 9 o'clock I gave up. I was knocked out, completely knocked out.
Where did you spend the night?
I left my bicycle standing in the mud, and I just staggered at the side of the road. It was a very heavy thunderstorm on, drenching rain. I was drenched to the skin. I hadn't had anything to eat since dinner at school. And I stumbled aside the road in the dark, and I just flopped down on the gutter at the side of the road against a bank. It was an eerie sort of place. There was a little waterfall up there, and at night time it all sounded very eerie indeed. Anyway, I went to sleep, dead to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, 3 o'clock, first thing I did was look at my luminous watch, 3 o'clock. I slept for 6 hours. And I went to get up. It was a beautiful, the rain and thunderstorm had gone. It was a beautiful, sparkling, clear night. Brilliant. And I was cold, and soaking wet, of course. I went to get up. It wasn't easy. I realised after a little bit I'd lain in the watercourse at the side, and I'd sewed it up all around with mud. And it was extraordinarily hard to get out of that mud. Anyway, I got out of the mud, got out. I stumbled out on the road. I found my bicycle without any trouble. It was still standing up straight. The mud was so deep. I struggled on. That time there was an accommodation house up on the top of the hill. I knew it was there, and I thought, well, I'll get help there. But I went past that accommodation house in the dark. I knew I'd passed it afterwards because I heard dogs barking. And I struggled on down. The Tauranga sawmill was operating then. I passed the end of the by road that runs off to the direction of Katikati. And where this road forked, I had no idea which road to take. So I just took one road at random. Fortunately, it was the right road. I struggled along this road till I was completely knocked up. I made very heavy work. I was going a few chains and then flopping down and resting, then getting up and struggling on again. By this time I was sure I was on the wrong road. There'd be nothing for it. I had to go back. There were no farmhouses or anything. There was completely isolated. There was a little rise ahead of me. I thought, no, I'll go on to the top of that rise, and if I don't see anything, I'll have to turn down and go back on that other road. When I got there, I saw the Tyreka sawmill way down this. I thought this was fine. It was Saturday, but they worked Saturday morning. When I got near the sawmill, there was a little bit of a rise going up to the cookhouse. I was so far gone by this time, I crawled up that rise on my hands and knees and got to the door of the cookhouse. Banged on the door, and a woman came out the door. No, a man came out first. He gave a explanation of the and called his wife along. They took me in, put me into a hot bath, dry clothes, sat me down at the table, gave me a really good breakfast, put me out on a heap of sawdust under the front of the mill in the sun, and went to sleep. In the afternoon, one of the mill hands was coming to town, pushed by, so he accompanied me in town, and I got to town on the hill all right.
Well, that must have been quite a relief finally to get here.
Well, nobody knew where I was. I could have stayed there for a week, anybody knowing, and I realised after, quite unwittingly, I'd taken a risk. However, I was fit. I never got a sniffly nose out of it.
Oh, you were very lucky. So, after you were married, you came to live here with your wife?
Yes. Oh, long after. We were married in 1927. And we paid several visits up here over the years. My aunt died in 1949, at the end of July 1949, and I'd actually got up here before she died. And my wife came up a week later, just packed things up at New Plymouth, and we've been here ever since. It was 40 years.
That's a very long time.
Last July.
Why was the Elms left to you and not to your brother?
That's quite a story. My brother had developed the farm at home and the garden. He had a beautiful place there. It was a show place. He'd spent his whole life there, and also the farm, which had been a very poor one. My father wasn't a good farmer. He was a forester. But my brother took it over. At the end of 20 years' work, he built it into a very fine farm indeed, very fine farm, show place. And and he had a tremendous garden there. He had his roots in very deep there, and also his wife didn't wish to come and live here for good sound reasons, so he abdicated in my favour. At one stage it was intended that this place should go to him, but my aunt changed the will just at the end, in consultation with him, and so I came here and want to be here for life.
Was your wife happy with the thought of coming to live here?
Yes, it's been a hard 40 years for her. We were very hard up when we came here indeed, and the place, my aunt had done a wonderful job in preserving this place over the years. Really wonderful. But they'd come through very hard times. They'd inherited the property, but no money with it, none at all. By 1912, they came to live here in 1887. By 1912, 25 years later, they got to the end of the road. My grandmother was bedridden, very difficult. The two aunts were worn out with the struggle. The boundary fences, we still had 17 acres, the boundary fences were lying on the ground in places. Every time there was a shower of rain, my aunts had to rush upstairs with buckets and basins and catch what they could of the water that was pouring through the shingle roofs. No money for repair work. So by 1912 they got to the end of the road all right. Father couldn't help them financially, but he came up from town in 1912 and said, "This has got to stop. You're killing yourselves. It's got to stop." Probably the biggest heartbreak of my aunt's life. The place was then cut up, all except this 2.5 acres. There were 47 sections sold. More than half were sold at the first sale. It was considered a good sale. Years afterwards, one and perhaps the most valuable section of the whole property was sold for, it was a full quarter acre. It was sold in about 1922 for £400. My aunts were quite disturbed about it. They didn't think it was right to accept all that money for quarter acre ground. On the other end of the scale, some of the places were, actually some sections down the beach were sold for £25. They got a lot more for others, but they certainly didn't get as much for the 47 sections as we'd get for one today if we had one for sale today.
What was the state of the house when you came in?
Except for the leak, the housekeeping was beautifully done. But mind you, it wasn't a modern house. There was no, the kitchen was in a separate building outside with a wood range. There was no water laid on. They used rainwater, which was running to large brick tanks, underground tanks, and then pumped out. One of my chores was pumping water with a day's supply of water. Of course, there was no electricity that day. We had used oil lamps and candles. There was no bathroom in the house. There was a tin bath in a detached room, detached building. So my aunts milked a couple of cows. There was a little dairy here. They made butter, which was sold, and had quite a big open run, fowl run. I think at times they had about 40 chooks and ducks.
What was it like bringing up your children?
Garden, huh?
What was it like bringing up your own family here?
Oh, well, no, I've gone back a bit too far. The fowl run, the milking of cows came to, house cows here, came to an end when the place was cut up in 1912. When I came there, although we leased some ground alongside, and we milked 4 cows here for several years after we came. We had a few sheep, so, but not when we came in 1910.
Well, when
grandmother had a very nice little phaeton, and one of my aunts, usually my Aunt Alice, would drive her out to pay her calls. Calling was quite a different ladies in town when I had their days at home. And their friends would go and call on them. Each had their day at home. And I remember so well, we as children, we'd be taken out in this little, when Granny went to pay her calls, one of my aunts driving. It was quite a, one day was a great adventure. We went away out in the country. We went out to Bethlehem. A well-known family had arrived from India, Mayfields. So my granny went out to call on these new arrivals, Mayfields, and it was right out of Bethlehem. Oh, it was a great adventure. I remember the horse plodding along the mud road, doing about 2 miles an hour. And we thought it was a great journey to go way out in the country like that.
Yes.
Take about 5 minutes now on the asphalt road. One of the things we used to enjoy here very much was to the mount, to the beach at the mount, picnicking. There were launches running on the harbour thing, you had to get over, and my grandmother used to picnic in style. There was a white linen cloth laid down the grass, and nice china got produced out of the baskets. It was quite a fashionable thing, picnicking thing. The old pilot house was still at the mountain. I think there was about one other building there. in 1910.
And how does your own family feel about the Elms? How do your children feel about it?
As I say, it was this place was, as a family home. It had been private property here since Archdeacon Brown purchased 17 acres of the mission land at the shortly after the end of the land wars, 1972. He purchased it in 1973, 17 acres. The property went from the beach up to the present Brown Street. And so this, although it was, he carried it on as a CMS station for another 10 years, 73, 83. It was a gallant effort. It wasn't futile. He accomplished something. But it was a sad 10 years for him. There was no, the golden years of the missions were over. He had no possibility of getting back to where he'd been. Eventually he was forced into retirement with old age and ill health. 1883. At that time he had just completed 54 years service in New Zealand mission field without a break. He died her following year, buried in the cemetery, mission cemetery. So the place had been private property since 73. So in 1910, there was still really a sense in the mission days. The mission work itself had ceased, but things were going on the same tempo here. My next visit out 1910 was when I was at school, Hamilton. I was over 2 or 3 times, 1918. From then on, I was here pretty constantly. I think usually once a year, till 1949. My aunt died the end of July 1949. I was actually with her at the time she died, and we knew then that we were coming to live here. I just stayed on. My wife packed up our home in New Plymouth, and she came here about 3 weeks later. Now, at that time, I'd been beekeeping Taranaki for a number of years, and I come through the slump period. I survived, but I was very hard up. I was substantially in debt. So this place presented a real problem, a problem which I was delighted to accept, but I knew it was going to be difficult. My aunt had done a wonderful job over the 62 years she'd lived here. She'd preserved the place. She passed it on to us free of debt. It was a great achievement under the circumstances. But in 1949, the place was well run down. The buildings all wanted repair. I walked around the place the day after the funeral, and I thought, now, how on earth am I going to cope with this? I was determined to cope with it, but I had no income. Straight away I made up my mind that a little change is possible. My aunt had a great number of visitors coming almost every day, going around the place, and she used to give them a talk in the house. So we closed the place on the day of my aunt's funeral, and from then on it's never been closed since. We just closed it for one day. For 39 years of at home, which are normally so, I conducted a proper tour around the place. I said an hour and a half. It was more often 2, sometimes 2.5 hours. Sometimes I did 2 tours every weekday, 39 years.
An amazing record.
In the period, I show many tens of thousands of people around here. It was an interesting experience. I studied up, I knew the history of the place fairly well before I came, and then fortunately I had made a lifetime study of early pioneer in mission history in New Zealand, so it was very much in my line. And kept the garden up. We put some extra piles in around the garden. The key word was no change, but we did put extra piles around the garden to make it easier conducting a tour around. There was a transit camp just across on the outside of Chapel Street where the playing fields are now. There was, I think it was 15 acres. The transit camp had just was just closed. There were a few left open. I was able to get the use of that ground to graze cows on. We kept 4 cows. We actually put in a little milking machine, a separator, power-driven separator. Went all down to the factory every second day with our little can of cream. We kept calves, raised calves. We had a few sheep and a little piggery. And for about 4 years I made a large sum of, I netted. Not only did we live off the land substantially, but in addition to that I averaged out about £6 a week, which was a very meaningful thing.
Mm. How old were your children then?
Our eldest girl was just grown up. She just trained as a Caratani nurse. She was just going off to her first job. She was 18 at that time, or no, I think she was 20. She was 20 at that time. And our son had left school, was on a sort of cadet on a sheep station at Awakina. He was 17. And our youngest daughter was just a little girl. I remember I used to walk down to Presbyterian Church with a little Christine each Sunday. Christine was walking along beside me. When we were living in New Plymouth, she used to go to St Mary's Anglican Church in New Plymouth. When I came here, I went back to the church of my father's, Presbyterian Church. So I used to walk down. Sorry, their grandchild.
Christine.
No, not Christine. I get you a bad way, and I can't remember the name of her children. Anyway, a little girl used to trot down to the school, church with me. She said to me one morning, said, all the people in town are Presbyterians. Oh, I said, I don't think so. I said, there are a good many Presbyterians here. She said, it's a strange thing, isn't it? The people in New Plymouth are Christians. That was a bad hand of a Presbyterians. However, to get on the story. Yes, I couldn't take any regular work because I couldn't attend to visitors and take regular work, and I was determined to. I had to abandon my beekeeping enterprise. Beekeeping assets I had down there weren't saleable at the time, so it was just a matter of walk out. I did carry on collecting honey down there for a bit, and I converted the little stable here into a honey room, packed honey there. I sold honey a bit, carried on that sort of part-time occupation for I think about 2 years. We had these 4 cows, but I had to get more than that. So I did various odd jobs, carpentering and machine fitting, intermittent times. Well, the best job I ever had was a very humble one. I was a night watchman, tucking boxings. Well, I carried on until they closed down. And we were supposed to, there were 2 night watchmen there. We were supposed to go on duty 6 hours a night for 6 hours a night. And holiday period was adjusted, so it came to a 40-hour week through the year. But my mate and I, we soon settled that. We went on to 12 hours a night for 1 week and took the next week off. So that down here, I used to go down there, start work at 5 o'clock. I'd get back here about 5:30 in the morning, go to bed. I'd be up midday meal and I'd be ready for my visitors at 2 o'clock. That planned out well. And then alternate weeks I was off altogether. I was able to get to work in the garden and so forth. I wish I'd had that job all the time. It would have been easier. But
tell me about the beginning of the Elms Trust.
The Elms Trust, yes. I made up my mind that come what might, we preserve this way permanently, both as a private family home and as a historic monument in the country. By this time, the place had been declared officially as #2 historic monument in New Zealand. We'd received some help, some very practical help from the Internal Affairs Department. They did a repair job in the house, and I painted the house and did our work. And just at that time, they were considering establishing a New Zealand Historic Places Trust. And as soon as it came into existence, they took over the work that had been done by the Internal Affairs Department. They haven't given us any money, but they've given us some very great helping repair work. They painted the house twice now. They did a big repair job in the house. Oh, quite a lot of work over the years. I'm very grateful for it.
What year did
then I started pondering the future of this place, and I just decided to form the Elms Trust. Its full title is the Elms Historic Family Home Preservation Trust Incorporated. Short title Elms Trust, which is quite convenient. And I registered the Elms Trust in 1962. Now, to start it off, the family is that I'm only here as life tenant. When my aunt told me that she was leaving the place to me, I said, well, don't do that. Leave it to my children with life interest to me. There's a very obvious advantage in that. It's kept one lot of death duties. And so, at my own discretion, I'm here as life tenant. It is arranged now that if I go before my wife, she remains as life tenant for her life. The children don't take over until we're both gone. Now, we have in this place a remarkable collection of the original contents of the mission station, which is described as the A.M. Brown collection. Books, documents, photographs. As a matter of fact, correspondence, as a matter of fact, there are tens of thousands of items, and it is a very valuable collection. Now, the family, in forming the trust, the family have given the whole of the A.M. Brown collection to the Elms Trust. Now, these things stay here just exactly as they are. And they will stay here, permanently as they are. And they include practically everything that was in that we have here now that was in the station in mission days. The trust was properly formed. New Zealand Historic Places Trust, they sent people up here, and there was an exact catalogue of the entire A.M. Brown collection. So the A.M. Brown collection was given to the Elms Trust. The property still remains our own private family home, but the trust owns the whole of the A.M. Brown collection. And it's a valuable collection now. That was done to ensure that these things are preserved permanently. They can't be sold, they can't be given away. And a great advantage, taxman can't touch them because the trust never dies. The Trust built the little chapel, which is a good copy of the original mission chapel. They've been given the Finksville Cottage. It's an interesting historic building. It was given and put on the place here. We use it in connection with our church services. Now, after 27 years, we are very satisfied indeed in the way the Trust is functioning. It's going to serve permanently to preserve this place for all time.
How do you see the future of the Trust?
We're now the Trust has been functioning for 27 years, and we are very confident that it will serve its purpose in seeing that this place and the A.M. Brown collection is preserved permanently. I must mention that I personally being fortunate in having generally very good health all my life, and I was used to hard work. My wife has been a real stalwart, and she, without the wonderful amount of work she put into the place, into the home, it would not have been possible for me to have carried on. Also, my brother, who died a couple of years ago, he took a tremendous interest in this place, and some of the nice trees and things we have planted here were provided by him. He gave me a great help and great encouragement over the years, very great encouragement over the years. We came through some pretty hard times financially, but I'm happy to say now we pay all our accounts. We are free of debt, and this place will be passed on to our children free of debt. We receive assistance in recent years from the City Council. We are now, for the time being, rate free, and for many years we were paying about half the rates. That's been a great help. The Trust has received several bequests, 2 of $5,000 each, and some smaller sums. The Trust receives small donations from their members, time by time. The City Council gives us help in the garden now. They pay for the mowing of the lawns. So all our own hard work, and